but it doesn't matter what time of year, it always rains one day during the festival. It's like I just expect it. And this year, this year was our first outdoor festival. And of course, the very first night it rained, the very first day, it was pouring rain here in Los Angeles, which it never does. And I was on the phone with the venue because they're like, well, if it continues to rain, we can't screen. And so we on our opening night, we were planning a backup plan for our opening weekend, which was crazy. And then, so this year we had to deal with the elements. The first weekend, it was rain and then heavy winds, which we typically get here too in Los Angeles. That was the second weekend. And then the final weekend, because we ran 3 weekends, we had a curfew in Los Angeles. And so it was just crazy because the curfew started at 10 and our final program was supposed to end at 10:30. And fortunately, our drive-in shared a parking lot with the Los Angeles Police Department, and we got permission to go over curfew.
Honestly, this sounds like the Valley Film Festival, I think, just made history with its 20th edition. And that's a brilliant intro to all we're going to discuss, because it sounds like, honestly, from here in Paris, it sounds seriously huge in all the ways you can imagine. I think this is it's really impressive, because I feel like really festivals are those who bridge the gap between the filmmakers and the distribution world. And really, like, this is what you've been working so hard on for 20 years. But like here, it's even getting to another level where basically first we're gonna talk about it more, but you had to move everything into drive-in so that it could be safe. And also it's so romantic and it's so nice in LA. LA is great with drive-in. So I think that's really a huge achievement. And I guess, was it during the festival that you heard about the curfew happening? Like, it must have been really like a last minute notice, right?
It was, because, we ran for 3 weeks, 3 weekends. And I think it was the Wednesday or Thursday before our final weekend that our mayor put a curfew on Los Angeles, starting the day that the festival ended. And so I had to call the theater to see if we needed to reschedule our timeline, because it was very easy to do. You know, we started a little late in the evening. So obviously you can't have a drive-in if it's still light outside. And so when I programmed, we were still on daylight savings time or whatever, regular time. And then we went into the time change where it was getting darker earlier. So I actually could have scheduled it to start an hour earlier to coincide with the sunset. And so I had called the theater to see if we needed to up our timeline by a half hour or an hour to accommodate them to meet the curfew, so that we weren't breaking any laws. And they reached out to the police department, since it was right next door, to see if we could get a permit to just go an extra 30 minutes. And we did it.
This is seriously outstanding.
But yeah, it was really nervous. And we did get a lot of people who didn't come, sadly, to closing night, because by the time our program would have ended, it would have taken like an hour for them to get home, and then it would be an hour and a half past curfew. So I do feel, even though we had a great turnout, it could have been a little better. And I think that the curfew just prevented people from coming, but I think we had a good time still.
Wow, this is amazing. And just for all the internationals, everyone who's listening or watching this today, please know, so of course, the Valley Film Festival that was funded by Tracey 20 years ago was having its 20th anniversary this year. So literally, if you're watching this now, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, so really not long ago. And so during the festival itself, at the very beginning, they Well, obviously during the year you had to realize you had to go either online, which you didn't want, but go into drive-ins. And then during the festival, you know, there is this curfew in California that happens on the very last day of your festival running. So really so many
Oh,
challenges. And Tracey, you've been doing so much champion filmmakers all those years.
thank
And
you.
again, this year for your 20th anniversary, it's like the symbol of all you've been doing for 20 years, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. Obviously, it is not the festival that we had envisioned last year, but it was still, I was just really happy that we were able to do a physical event. Because it meant a lot to filmmakers. We received so many emails and so many text messages and stuff from filmmakers letting us know that we were their only physical screening this year. So it meant a lot to see how much it meant to other people. Because sometimes you forget it. Like when we're knee deep in production, we're not thinking. I mean, obviously, we're thinking about the filmmakers, but we're not thinking about the emotions that they're going through during this. We're just worried about, can we get a permit? Can we get insurance? Can we finish this? And so that was the majority of our year, was trying to find a venue, making sure our insurance company would cover us for the venue, and then making sure that we were complying with city and state COVID guidelines.
I so appreciate you saying that because I think you're absolutely right. Like it's the premieres of the film for the filmmakers. It's such an important moment. And of course, we know that it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot about what the festival does, but it's a lot also about the involvement of the filmmakers, right? They put a lot of themselves in the film. And again, for the premieres, usually they're so committed. They're there, they really participate also on social media, like they're
Mm-hmm.
really part of this experience, right? And I guess this is the experience you also provide. And this is honestly the most brilliant intro. I feel what you've been doing this year for the 20 years. You've been pushing films and filmmakers. And I can't wait to hear more because you're really championing the filmmakers. And I know you know Rebecca, who also interviewed you. And Rebecca is the film festival doctor, and she speaks so highly of
Yep.
you. And I know there is also one of the films she represents, Marcus. I saw the pictures from your drive-ins because it was selected at the Valley Film Festival this year and it looks so incredible. Also, I think it
Oh,
did win some award, right?
it did. It won our juried 10 Degrees Hotter award. And our award is called 10 Degrees Hotter because it is 10 degrees hotter in the Valley than anywhere else in Los Angeles.
That's
So
awesome. I
it's
love
much
it. This is
hotter
kind of
here.
what I guess, and I think
Yeah.
it's a brilliant name. It looks so cool. You know, it's like, it looks also like, I can't wait to hear about the history of the Valley Film Festival because can you tell us how did it happen 20 years ago? What was the atmosphere in Hollywood, in LA, in the Valley, the industry, and why you started this festival at the beginning?
Sure. Well, I'm from the Valley. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, San Fernando Valley, which, for those who are not familiar with the LA map, it is pretty much most of LA. It is Ventura Boulevard is 22 miles long, and if the San Fernando Valley were to break apart from the city of Los Angeles, it would be the sixth largest city in the United States. So that's how big a landscape it is. It is also where almost all the studios are. It is where Disney is, Warner Brothers, Universal, CBS. I think the only ones that are not in the Valley are Paramount, Sony, whatever's on, in Culver City and in the Hollywood proper area. So I went to college at New York University, and I was living in New York. I spent a good 10 years there, and I was planning to come back to Los Angeles because my father was ill at the time. And I was just trying to find a film festival that I could get involved with. I did not start out to start my own. I just wanted to find one in the Valley that I could be a part of. I came from volunteering at different festivals in New York, and it was just a really great experience, and it was a really great use of my skill set. So like I said, I went to NYU, I went to film school, but I'm not a on-set production person. I really liked the producing aspect. I liked the event production aspect, but I didn't like being on set for 16, 18 hours. I had a social life, and on-set production
Good for
did
you,
not mesh
because I
with
feel
it.
filmmakers don't. As filmmakers, we really don't so much.
Yeah. So it was just something I learned early on, and I was just trying to figure out where I fit in the industry landscape, that where I still felt like I was using my degree. And I was working at, or interning actually, at the French Film Office in New York at
Wow.
UniFrance. And one of my colleagues there was involved in a organization called Gen Art, which was huge for a long period of time. They're no longer together. Um, and they were starting a film festival at the time in New York. And so I just kind of, you know, met up with them and volunteered with them for many, many years. So when I came to LA, like I said, I was just looking for a film festival to be a part of. And at the time, this was 20 years ago, there weren't too many festivals in Los Angeles. There were, oops, hold on one second. Sorry, I think
Yes, you're
my,
right. I just click so you can come back. Honestly, all you're saying is so inspiring.
there we go.
This is really, really impressive. So at the beginning, you were in New York City and you were working at the French office, right? Because I saw your post about Godard. Thank you so much for mentioning his birthday.
Oh, oh my gosh. French New Wave cinema, I think, is probably a lot that inspired me in my university days.
Oh, that's
So yeah, I love
fantastic.
Godard. I love Romer. I really like Romer.
Yes.
And Claude Chabrol. I really like all of those filmmakers a lot. And then Billy Wilder is my favorite American filmmaker. But I'm so sorry. I thought I see my pictures back up, so we're good.
Yes, it was
So at the
only for a few
time that
seconds.
so when I was, like I said, when I moved back to LA, I was just looking for a film festival to get involved in. And 20 years ago, there weren't too many. There was the Los Angeles Film Festival. Actually, I don't even
Yes.
think the LA Film Festival had started that, because they would have been celebrating, I think, their 20th year, 21st year right now.
I believe they stopped, didn't they? I think they stopped, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
they stopped a few years ago, but it was Film Independence Film Festival, and then Dances with Films, and then a handful of others, but none served the Valley. And, when I was a kid growing up in the Valley, there were movie theaters everywhere. And, at that time, there weren't a lot of theaters. We had lost our mom and pop art houses, one screen art
Mm,
houses, to multiplexes, and they were spread out. So we had one at Universal, and then I think the next one was probably 10 miles away in Van Nuys, and then the next one was probably another 10 miles away in the West Valley. So we
that's
didn't have
crazy.
too many venues in the Valley at that time.
Yes.
Lemley did have a presence. They still had their Encino location, which is where I grew up watching a lot of art house films as well. And so I was looking for a festival to just get involved in, couldn't find one. It was also at the time when the Valley was trying to separate from Los Angeles. So all of these facts and figures about the tax revenue that Los Angeles would lose if the Valley left, stemming mostly from the adult film industry, which is very big here. and and I just like I said, I just wanted to be part of something and I couldn't find one. So I was like, how hard can it be? I'll just start one.
Wow.
And
Yes.
I,
You feel,
for
let's go
some,
for it.
why not?
Don't be too hard.
Yeah. And so in my head, I thought, well, it has to be a nonprofit arts organization. I don't know why I thought that. So I was like, all right, so the first step is to file the paperwork and set up this nonprofit. In California, we have a wonderful organization called California Lawyers for the Arts, and they help arts organizations get all their paperwork set up. And they were helping me. And the lawyer who was assigned to me said this could take 2 years to get your 501c3 status. So in the meantime, while I'm doing this for you, why don't you piggyback off of a fiscal nonprofit, such as, and he gave me like 2 or 3 recommendations, and one was Community Partners. So Community Partners is a nonprofit arts organization, and they have projects underneath them. So I'm one of maybe 100 projects. And they do all the nonprofit administrative paperwork and making sure that we stick to the nonprofit code of ethics, and that we're like working, that we're doing everything correctly, that we're not like, I don't know, funneling money wrong or something. I have no idea. So I applied to become a project of Community Partners. This was 20 years ago. And I remember when they accepted me, they said, well, most projects stay here for 8 years. And then they feel like they have the backbone to just, go out and do their own thing. I've been with them for 20 years because it's just so easy. We only do one big event per year. And it just didn't seem, when we were thinking of going for profit and leaving Community Partners, I was like, it's just not worth it because they do everything. They take care of our taxes. We get insurance through them. They take a percentage of, our fundraising, but it's so worth it because then I don't have to do the paperwork and I don't have to make sure that I'm following the ever-changing nonprofit guidelines. They just tell me what's changed and tell me how to move forward.
That's really
So
good.
I really,
That's very professional.
yeah. So I really did. That's why we're still with them, because they take care of us. And, we do, even though we produce events year round, they're small compared to the festival. And so just to have the support and know that I have a legal team behind me, I have a, insurance team behind me, I have a payroll team behind me. It's so easy. So it allows me to manage the organization when my small team is off doing other things. So I don't have to rely on everyone 24/7.
That's wonderful. And yes, I love hearing the stories behind the festival, because you know how we love hearing the stories behind the film or the filmmaking.
Yeah.
But I feel, obviously, and the festivals are also part of creating and telling these stories. And I feel the stories behind the festivals are amazing, like especially yours. It's 20 years old. It's a brilliant anniversary. And you're right, there is so much that goes in the festival. There's so much work. And I think your filmmakers must really appreciate that there's such a solid structure, because it's a lot of work. You're creating a lot of films. Obviously, you have events. Sometimes, who knows, maybe a global pandemic can happen, It's there to have, you never know what can happen. It's important to have everything covered, so, right? And also, I can't wait to discuss all the aspects, because obviously you have a lot of international filmmakers, I guess also a lot from LA and the US, but really it's a global experience, right? Can you tell us how it evolved throughout the years? At the beginning, did you have more American filmmakers, and did it grow? How did that come together?
Sure. So our first year, our first few years, I would say up until year 5, you have to remember this was before we had online submissions. This
Yes,
was this was a
yes.
lot of not everyone had internet too 20 years ago. And so I just remember the very first years, I had like this notebook full of website addresses. And we used to just go and just plaster our call for entries everywhere. And we were still accepting like physical submissions. So the first year, I have to say, it's weird how submissions, where they come in from and what they're about, because it does tell a story about our existence here. So our first year, I think most of our submissions came from Texas. I have no idea why.
That is hilarious.
Um,
But Texas has great
yeah,
cinema, right? Great
no, they
filmmakers.
do. They absolutely do. But most of our submissions came from Texas that first
Mm.
year, and um, and then I think it took a couple of years before we started to get submissions from Los Angeles, and then it took a little more time to get specific submissions from the Valley, like a majority of submissions from the Valley. And we were having a hard time. So we were having a hard time because we were still so small. We were having a hard time attracting like these really big LA premieres because there were obviously other festivals that had been around a little longer than us that required premieres and would prevent filmmakers from screening with us. We're a little more relaxed about it. Yes, we do like premieres, but if it's a good film, it's a good film. So we're just going to go with that. And so I started to think about, well, if we can't get really good films from LA, let's just try and get them from the rest of the world. And I made a really big effort to start attracting international films because French thrillers are my favorite. Italian films are also one of my favorites, Italian classics. So I think it was around 2008 was the first time I went to the Cannes Festival, and I just really loved it. And so I just kept going back like every other year. That was my thing.
Yes.
And because of that, I think we started to build this international presence. And then obviously with the advent of, Film Freeway and other online portals, it just makes it so much easier for filmmakers to find us.
I so appreciate you saying that because I feel you see it with a lot of humility because you still talk about your difficulties, but it's been your 20th anniversary. And as you say, even not getting back so far away, but I remember when I was working at Gaumont 7 years ago. So I was sending the Gaumont films to festivals. And there was something that was starting called Without a Box. But I still had to send the films to all the festivals one by one. And also for the festival edition, we would receive all the films with DVDs. So then you have to send back. And actually, it was also a lot more cost for the filmmakers because instead of sending it on Film Freeway, they had to send it. And you've been through so much. And I think it's important to remember that also because now we are having a lot of changing this year. And it's interesting about the premieres because a lot say it's hard to know if it's true, but because of the pandemic, a lot say maybe festivals won't be so precious anymore about the premieres because of the industry changing. It's really interesting. So I'm really curious to hear your take about that because just to clarify now, how much does the premiere, like either some filmmakers listening or watching, how much does the premiere of a film in LA matter to submit to the Valley Film Festival? Is it important or not so much?
I mean, ideally we'd like it for a variety of reasons. It's not so much that we want the premiere status, it's that filmmakers, if they've screened multiple times in LA, it gets harder for us to pitch their film to our distribution network if
Yes.
other people have already done it. It gets harder for our media to write about it because it's already screened multiple times and someone else might have written about it. So there's that. And then if they are local filmmakers, you know, by your fifth or sixth screening, your friends and family don't want to come out anymore. So it's so
Yes,
it's a
probably.
little difficult. And with foreign, so I mean, I say that ideally we want it. Um, and we do look at it, but if the film is great and if it comes down to a really good film that's screened a few times or a so good film that hasn't screened, we're probably going to go with the film that connects with us more.
Yes, yes, that makes a lot
So,
of sense. And
yeah.
there are so many different films, right? Every film is different. So depending
Mhm.
on the message of a distribution circuit, some films you'd expect if it's already premiered, probably it will be distributed by then, some not, and also depending on the year, some years are more unusual than the others. So it's really interesting to hear your take on that. And coming back to Cannes,
Mhm.
and I've heard that
Mhm.
your festival has a mini market, right? You've been working quite hard in Cannes to meet the distributors so they can attend the festival, and
Mhm.
it's really precious for the filmmakers, isn't it?
It is. Well, so it just kind of happened organically. So our festival typically runs the week before or the week of AFM. And we didn't do it on purpose. It's just that's the week we fell. And and then we already had distributors here or distributors willing to talk to us. And also because we're in LA, we have access, you know, distributors are here year round. So it's
Yes.
really easy to reach out to them. It's hard to get them to attend a screening, but it's easier for us to approach a distributor with a slate of films than it is for a filmmaker to approach a distributor with their film. And they appreciate it because we've already done the vetting. We've already gone through our submissions and we've already pulled out what we think is the best that has come in this year. And so they
Yes.
trust us a little more because we've already done the vetting for it. And it just, I have to say the distribution idea was Georgia Menendez's idea. She came from a distribution background, and she was working on the festival. She's another NYU Violet.
Oh, I
Go
love it.
Tish.
Yeah, waving your flags.
Yeah. And so
Good times.
she was coming from the distribution world and said, hey, I think we should approach these distributors with our feature films. And so this was probably, I want to say in 2012 is when we started doing it a little, when we started like dedicating time to it. Because that was also the time that we moved over to the Lemley NoHo 7. Their venue had just been built, and it had a wonderful screening projector. You know, they screen on Christie 4K projectors, so it's a beautiful picture and sound. And so now that we had like this state of the art venue that we could showcase films, we started approaching distributors. And really what we did then was we would put our features together in a wonderful little presentation and in a PDF presentation and send it out to them and see who bit. And then over the years, we got to know individuals at companies. And maybe about 3 years ago, we decided, let's see, it was in 2017 that we decided we needed to dedicate a whole day or 2 days to putting together a mini market. And so we invited distributors out to dinner because we figured that's the only way we're going to get them to
That's a good
actually
strategy.
physically come and meet us. So we like contacted
I love it. It's so
15
fun.
distributors. Yeah. Well, we didn't know how to get them to meet with us physically. So we just, one of the other things we do is we celebrate. So our area code in the Valley is 818. And on August 18th, which would be 818, we typically have a Celebrate the Valley Day kind of thing. So we were already doing this celebration on August 18th. And we said, let's just piggyback on that and invite these distributors out and tell them we'll pay for their drinks and dinner. And so we got like 15 distributors. I think we invited like 30 or 40, but we got 15 to come meet with us.
That's
and yeah, and so because of that, they were able to like see us face to face, because I think it's easier to build a relationship when you've met someone physically, and they know that you're a person and not a name and an email address or a voice on the phone. Which is why I'm kind of glad, you know, a silver lining of COVID is that everyone has adapted to video chats so easily. And I think that makes all the difference in the world when you can see someone. Yeah, so we started meeting distributors face to face to see what they wanted. And then I think in 2018, we tried to put a market together and we couldn't. I don't know what the actual issue was. I think we were trying to find a venue and we couldn't, because the Lemley, we were looking for a second venue. So the Lemley was it's our screening venue. They don't have much public space. And it was too expensive to use our screening time for a market in one of the theaters. So we needed to find a second venue to do this, and we just couldn't. I think one within our budget, I should say. So, we just couldn't find one that was within walking distance of the theater. And so we just sort of put the physical events on hold, but still reached out to our distributors. And Georgia did a really good job at just building that list up. So she would just continually reach out. And then in 2019, I was looking for a venue for my birthday party. and there was a venue that, I mean, I grew up on this street and I never knew this recording studio existed, and it had been there for 40 something years. But I found this recording studio that was it was everything we needed and everything we wanted. It was like a clubhouse. It was like, you know, it had a stage that could screen films and also host live music. It had a smaller stage and lounge area so that people could network. It had a huge backyard patio, and it had a bar. So it was like perfect for us. And so we ended up renting that space out in addition to the Lemley Theater. And fortunately, we were really lucky to have financial support from sponsors that enabled us to rent out this second venue. And it went well. We dedicated, actually, you know, the festival was 9 days. And even though we did one day that was strictly a market, we also did multiple days of panels that were about distribution or about funding that did not fall on that day. And so our mini market, I actually called it a symposium after the fact because it was only one day. And we didn't, our intent was to set up booths for these filmmakers. But what we ended up doing was just inviting the filmmakers who were in the festival. So it was private. It wasn't open to the public. We invited the filmmakers that were in the festival to attend. And then the feature filmmakers, we paired up for one-on-one meetings with these distributors that we had. I think we had 10 companies represented there that day. And so we just paired everyone up. And again, that was one of Georgia's brilliant ideas. We did like a meet and match kind of thing. And it went really, really well. And we were obviously hoping to build on that this year.
Yes.
And that didn't happen, but that's okay. I think we will try and do it whenever we can next year, whenever it's safe, obviously, because people need to
Yes.
Be there in person, I think.
Of course, and thank you so much for giving credit to Georgia. I think this is wonderful that there's such great teamwork, and I so appreciate you talking about distribution so openly and distributors, because we talk a lot about festivals. Well, at the end of the day, festivals, they also are here for that, right? For distribution. Because there's sometimes people who think festivals are just for a club, but really no, it's not just for a club. Like usually filmmakers, when they go to festivals, like the professional filmmakers, is to get their films distributed, finding a sales agent, but sometimes where they already have one attached, and it's really just to spread it with the word. So I think like your idea with the mini market and the networking and just how you found that space, I think that's really, really inspiring. It makes me think of all this Hollywood stories, like even if it's the Valley, but like it's very old Hollywood, like in such a good way. I really love, and I think it's wonderful, and I really understand why Rebecca loves your festival so much. Like I think it's outstanding. It's yeah, because really like festivals, there are a lot of festivals, but the festival we push the films to the distribution process, and 15 distributors for a start. That's a lot of distributors attending the festival.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but so thank you. Yes, I will accept that. Coming since we're in LA and there's hundreds of them here, obviously in my head, I'm thinking 15 is too low, but thank you for saying 15 is great.
Yes. I think it's important to mention it because, as you said, at the very first edition 20 years ago, you had a lot of films from Texas and New York, right? But really, also, it's important to remember the filmmakers who are watching or listening that it's important, very important, to send your films internationally because your audience is international. It's more and more international. No need to repeat that. And really, distribution there is really important. So if you send your film to Tracey at the Valley Film Festival, you can really have that opportunity. And I think it's extremely important to mention this because there are all kinds of festivals. And Rebecca also explains really well, the Film Festival Doctor, how you must understand your goal. So if your goal is for your film to be distributed, please make sure the festival does have a market, that distributors actually attend these festivals, because if they don't, you may be really disappointed. So it's just important to know where you stand, and I think you do that brilliantly. And honestly, I'm amazed. I think this is just like it's really brilliant, and I can't wait to see the market coming back also when it's possible and when it's safe.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you for bringing up Rebecca. I love her. She's been a great friend to the festival and a great friend to me personally over the years, now that we've known each other for so long. But yeah, when I talk to filmmakers myself, I always ask what their goal is. Like, is their goal to use this film to get distribution, to make another film? Is this just their one and done? And they're just looking to have it in as many films as possible. So it's really important to know what your goal is before you submit to a festival. And it's really easy. Well, it's really easy for me to spot those films that aren't really in it for that they're just there to collect laurels. So
Yes.
you can tell, yeah, you can tell who those which films those are. And we also have on Film Freeway, we did customize a few questions pertaining to submission. So I can tell, like, by the answers, who's really invested in their film and themselves. and versus people who are just submitting to us to submit. And sometimes, like when we're trying to program, we do program those films because they're good. I mean, they are good
Yes.
films. We always focus on the storytelling. So I don't know if you were going to ask me about programming, but I'm just going to get into it.
Yes, please, please.
So when we program the festival, we first focus on our feature films because that's our base. We focus on our features, and we look at feature films in a variety of ways. I have a wonderful documentary programmer, James Latham, who loves documentaries, and he writes essays about each film that is submitted. And I should just start sharing this with the filmmakers because he just does such a
Yeah.
beautiful job talking about each film and how it how it fits within our festival, or if it won't fit within our festival. And so he watches the documentaries first. We have 3 people to watch. Every submission gets 3 views. And so James does the first vet on the doc features, and then Georgia and I do the first vets on the narrative features. And so when we're programming, we're looking at films that have a really great story, and a story that is told differently than, because all the stories are the same, but it's just how you tell it. And so we're looking for stories that are just unique and fun. And then obviously we need to have some element tied to LA or the Valley because it's part of our programming. So when we are programming features, we're looking to see if it will fit in that category in our Made in the 818 mission. And then if they don't, obviously we still consider them because we do screen a lot of films from outside of California and obviously internationally. But really we're looking at, can we sell this to, not us personally, but can we present this to a distributor? Do we have someone in mind? Because we're just the middleman. We don't take commissions. We don't ask for money. We're just putting the filmmaker and the distributor together, and then what happens. We have no control over it. But we are thinking about, can we present this to our slate of distributors? And if the filmmaker doesn't have the means to market or support the festival, can we do it on our own? So we always try and look for films that we have an audience for. So we try and program from what we know we can do ourselves without relying on the filmmaker.
Wow.
Obviously, it would be great to rely on the filmmaker, but
Yes.
it's just not possible. So we're looking at ways that we can promote the festival, and if we feel we have the audience, then that is something we take into consideration. So we program our features first, and then we go through the short films and try and find a short that complements each feature. And that's really important because each short in each film is paired together for a specific reason. We don't just throw them together. We're really careful about matching the themes or the message or just the look and vibe or the genre. But it's thoughtfully put together.
I'm sure you must think about every aspect. So it's a brilliant event, right? And so are they screened together? Do you screen the short before the feature?
Yes. So we screen a music video, then a short film, about 10 minutes or less, and then the feature film.
Wow, that's wonderful. It's good to know. It's something we do a lot in France. It's very common here. It's really interesting to hear. And about your programming, there's a topic that's really important for us here also at Paris. How do you go about diversity, representing female filmmakers or filmmakers from minorities? How does it work?
Yeah, so it's funny. I was just interviewed the other day about this, and
Yes.
Honestly, we don't have a specific diversity and inclusion mission, but we do have so part of our mission is to make our call for entry fee really affordable. So it's $8.18 US dollars. And then we also have submission scholarships for filmmakers who are affected by conflict or war, so that it doesn't matter where you are. If you have something and it's important to be screened, we want to be able to showcase that, or at least see it to showcase it. and um, and then we also do make an effort to have some sort of parity in terms of female filmmakers, or those who identify as female filmmakers, and those who identify as male filmmakers. So we do have in our custom questions, we do ask some more personal questions to dig deeper into who made the film. But it's not, it really comes back to the storytelling. So if the film is good and we like it, we're going to program it. But we do try and make sure that if we have 10 films and they're all great, but 9 of them are made by men and 1 is made by a woman, we'll program that one by a woman. That's if all films are, exactly the same and great. But I think when we focus on the festival and the storytelling and just making sure that we are sticking true to conscious programming, that the diversity just falls naturally into it. And I think that's what we do. We did a couple years ago make an effort to really, so I realized a couple years ago that, wow, as a festival, we have a platform and we can control what people watch, like on our end. And do we want to be that festival that is showcasing films about spousal abuse and, or films that have rape scenes in them? Or gun violence, and we just decided not to, unless it was part of the story. If it was obviously just a scene and really had no storytelling element to it, then we just weren't programming those anymore.
Yes. That sounds very reasonable.
Yeah, so we're just very conscious of the media that we are presenting to people to consume. And I think when we just stick to without trying to put things into buckets outside of our Made in the 818, then I think the diversity just falls naturally in there. Now, I will say 20 years ago, it was all men submitting to the festival, and it was really hard. Like, I did make an effort to try and get women to submit, and to submit films that were not documentaries.
Did you see an evolution in that throughout the 20 years? Because a lot of documentaries used to be, a lot of female filmmakers used to be from documentaries before, right?
Yes.
Did you see actually that change?
Yes, absolutely. So it's actually been really great to see the changes that have come over the years. Like, first, just technology wise, we went from screening on 35 millimeter to a beta tape, and then to DVD, and then to Blu-ray, and then to a hard drive on a computer, and then finally to DCP for the last 8 years. We've been on DCP over at
the whole shebang, right? You've been through every format, haven't you?
Yes, yeah. So,
that's amazing.
So similarly, we see a lot of how storytelling has changed, and how filmmaking is now more accessible to a lot of people, younger people, people in different countries, that may not have the studios or the equipment that, you know, filmmakers in LA do. I think filmmakers in LA, and I might have mentioned this on Rebecca's podcast, sometimes I feel like because we make films so often here in Los Angeles, that it's not as special as that crew somewhere in a remote part of the world, where they only get one chance at making a film. And so I think they put filmmakers who know they have one chance and are only making one film to begin with, or it's their first, I think they put a little more thought and effort into it. Not effort, that's the wrong word, because
I
I
see
know
what
that,
you mean.
yeah, I know filmmakers here put a lot of effort and thought into filmmaking too, but I think it's more like, you know, LA is a company town, it's a factory of film. And so
Yes,
people
yes.
are always making films here. And you know, I think on the weekends, people just get together and make something with their friends, whereas elsewhere you really have to plan. Um,
For sure.
and so I brought that up because what was the question? Sorry.
Yeah, honestly, all you're saying is so inspiring. So you could just carry on. Honestly,
Okay.
because of the format, you know, we were discussing how you went through all the formats and
Oh,
how the
right.
industry changed really. Because you probably saw
Sure.
the evolution with a lot of female documentary filmmakers, but more fiction, right? I hope so.
They are making fantastic fiction films now, so it's really great to see.
Yeah.
Yes, we were talking about the evolution of storytelling throughout the years, and then I think, you know, when the iPhone came out, we were starting to get a lot of films made on the phone, and the first couple of years they were not that good. I think there was a time when the tools became so accessible that everyone thought they could make a film, and they can't. And so the quality wasn't that good. Sound was also a big issue. And sound is one of my pet peeves, so
Yes,
it
yes.
was me.
I want to tackle on that too, because
Yeah.
when you must receive so many submissions. So for our listeners, the filmmakers who watch and listen this, what are your biggest advice to them? Like whether it's
Sure.
during making of the film or even during the festival phase, which is extremely important.
Right. So technically, just make sure you have a clear picture and sound, because even though we're watching the submissions on our computer, we are projecting on a much larger screen. And so if we have that in the back of our head, like, how is this going to sound in a theater? How is this going to look if it's blown up? Which is why when we were first talking about composition and props and stuff, it makes all the difference, because you can see everything in the background when you are in a theater with a huge screen, and you can hear every pop or every the conversations going on in the background, you know, of a film. So we really listen and we really look to see, how is this going to look on a bigger screen? Is it going to project well? Is it going to sound well? So we look at that. We also, this is one of the areas that I wish I could somehow magically get involved in, but subtitles are really important as well. So if I think people rely on Google to translate their subtitles, and especially our Spanish films. I hate to call them out, but I am. So our Spanish films routinely, even though they're beautiful films, and I want so much to showcase them, the subtitles on those films, most of the time, are just poorly translated. And it's just, yeah, it's hard, because when you're an audience, when you're an English speaking audience, and you're trying to pay attention to the story and the picture, and read the subtitles, if the subtitles are wrong and don't make sense, then it takes you out of the story. And the whole point of that is to just make sure you're in the story. So subtitles are also really important. And I'm always happy to, if someone is willing to, redo the subtitles, I'm always willing to read them and tell them what would make more sense for an English speaking audience. I've done that a few times for films, mostly in Eastern Europe, that have reached out and said, hey, do you mind? And I was like, sure, not a problem.
Wow.
So always happy to help.
And that's really generous of you, because it's and I agree with you. I think it's very important advice. Like when you've put so much effort into your film, there are some things that you must have, like beautiful pictures, but also great, obviously a professional DCP, but also just great subtitles. I completely agree with you. The timing, just the way it must be done professionally.
Absolutely. Yeah, we did have a film this year that I really liked and I wanted to screen. And we declined the film. We declined the film, and then the filmmaker wanted to know why. And I said, well, ultimately it came down to your subtitles. And he was really offended that we didn't fix his subtitles and like redo them for him and give him that feedback before so he could have fixed them. I'm like, it's not our job to do this after the fact. We're in a crunch ourselves, but I did tell him I would help him if should he have wanted it. He never wrote back, but offer still stands if that particular filmmaker is watching this.
Yes, and as you say, I think really the filmmaker's involvement is so important, right? And if a film is selected at your festival, again, for the filmmakers who are watching this, it's really important that you go the extra mile. You go and you promote it and you do all the press. Like for all the premieres I've been for my films, I would do all the press. You also, because the audience really want you to be there and tell the story and connect with them, and for you to know them, it's also really important. So I completely agree with you. It's the filmmaker's responsibility, right? Their involvement is extremely precious and important. And it's about education, isn't it? Knowing that every step is important. When your film is finished, I feel it's only the beginning, really, right, of the adventure.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, the making of the film is one adventure, and then the rollout of the film is a total second adventure that you have to treat with pre-production, production, and post. So it's the same thing.
Yes,
absolutely.
Every step is important.
Another piece of advice that I would give to filmmakers who are submitting films to any festival is just make sure that whomever is submitting on your behalf, that they are using an email address that they check regularly and not a specific email tied to the film that no one checks. Because, more often than not, we have to track down films that we want to program, and we're doing all sorts of sleuthing on social media and inboxing on Facebook or Instagram to see if it's the correct person, because no one has responded to our outreach. So I tend to do a handful of things during our submission process, mostly because I know that email sent through the Film Freeway network probably ends up in spam. I'm going to assume that. I know our personal newsletter, even though we use a third party to send it out, I know that it most likely ends up in spam a lot too. And there's just, I don't know what to do about that. There's, it's just the internet.
Yes, and the filmmaker's involvement again, right? To check Film Freeway or whatever it is, just to be on it all the time. And again, to the filmmakers who watch, when the festival is asking for something, please answer the same day if you can. Please put all the info you can in the Film Freeway platform, the pictures, the trailer, because really, like, they're working so hard. And obviously, Tracey, like, you've been working so hard for so many years, and like usually a lot of people in the team are volunteers or they end up volunteering at some point just because it's so much work, right? So please, they love your film, so please make their life as easy as possible. It's for your own good. And I always feel that when your film is selected with a festival, it's like teamwork, right? And look at what you've been doing. Sometimes, you know, a global pandemic happens like this year, and really, I think it's really inspiring to see that together you still manage to do this amazing edition with drive-ins and kind of be part of the history of it, right? I think that's really precious.
Yeah, this year, so we treat our filmmakers as if they're family. And actually, one of our filmmakers this year that we did an online interview with, a previous festival filmmaker, John Putch, we had an interview with him, I think in September. And his like motto as a director is to be a host, not a boss. And so that's really how I approach the festival as well. And we try and be hosts and not like these festivals just like breathing down your neck. And we treat you like family. So we really want you to be involved during the festival and even after the festival. Yeah. So our awards are all juried by festival peers. So they're all previous festival participants.
Wow, that's
we
wonderful.
Do not, yeah, I and like the staff, we do not have a say in who wins. So it's really decided upon by peers. And if you want to be a part of that, please do. We love when other people participate. But yeah, so this
we
year,
love to support in any way. And I think it's so inspiring because, as you say, as filmmakers, you will want to attend the festival again. You will want to, we can promise that, right, Tracey? It's like, it's because you also, you're like a team, as you say, you're like family. So you support each other. Even throughout the years, I completely understand that, and I agree. And I will love to. And also, I want to ask you something, because it sounds like you have such a deep love for French cinema. I would love to know what Paris inspires you, you know, or what French cinema inspires you, because it obviously inspires me too.
Sure. So what I like about French cinema is just what is the word I'm looking for? It's just, I think French cinema tells a story without words. Like you can watch a film and know exactly what's going on without listening to it. And I had a film professor who taught us in his particular class to rely on the picture, because film is visual. And so you should rely on, you know, just like the silent films, just rely on the picture to tell the story. And so I really like just the long pauses in films and
yes, me too.
and and really just the casual lifestyle that I think everyone you know, would love to, or at least I want, of just being able to have a great dinner party outdoors with 10 of your friends. Of course, that's not going to happen anytime soon, but you know,
no, but yeah, yes.
Just being able to everything. You know, I love cooking and I love sharing food and I love having people at my dinner table. I think Rebecca's been to a few of my dinner parties, but I really like that, and I love that often that food tends to be like the center of some big problem in a French film. Like,
it is. Oh, I so love that you say that, because I can't agree more. You know, it's so crazy. I feel we've not been in touch before, because my feature, The Golden Age, is actually about that. You know, it's set in the 60s. It's inspired by the French wave. And what I love from the French films from that time is that at the time you could, even now in France, you can have a time for a conversation. You can have a time to eat with someone and to fall in love. You know, you could take the time of all this. And I think it's, yes, in films like the French New Wave, I think it's still really, really present. So I really love you saying that. And have you been to
Oh,
Paris quite a few times before?
I've been to Paris. I've been to France, and I've been to Paris a handful of times. I have not been in, I think, 3 years. I think my last trip abroad was last year in 2019, and that was to Italy. So I tend to like the Mediterranean region, just because I love the food and I love the weather and I love the smells. I love just the flowers and the food and just everything. Um, but yeah, I don't know if I could figure out how to live abroad, I would, but right
Yes,
now I'm here.
exactly. And I can't wait for you to come back. And I'll have to invite you to dinner in Paris so you come, just like you did with the distributors. And
Yes,
you feel really good, right? Because, yes, we'll deserve it for sure.
absolutely.
And Tracy,
Absolutely.
you've been so generous with your time. I just
Oh, of
wanted
course.
to ask you if you had a last thought or if this year taught you anything, how you feel about the future. And congratulations again, because honestly, like for the whole 20 years, obviously, but even this year, the pictures from the drive-ins and the films you had, I know they were really fantastic. So congratulations again. I think this is
Oh,
really inspiring.
thank you. Yeah, I think my final thoughts would be, um, always revisit ideas. So when the pandemic happened, when it shut us down in March, our festival was supposed to be in August. Never in a million years did I think we would not have a theater open in August here in Los Angeles. But we were actively looking for a backup plan just in case. And our first plan was a drive-in. But at the time, we didn't have drive-ins in LA, in the city itself, or definitely not in the Valley. We had two big drive-ins in LA County, but they're on county lines, so they're kind of far to get to. And so I had wanted to create a drive-in in a parking lot. And when I went to our insurance company, they were like, nope, can't do that. And
Yes,
they're
right.
like, you're going to have to insure every single car that comes in, and we don't want to do that. And I was like, all right. So I kind of took that drive-in option off the table back in April. And so we were just looking for different ways to, if we had to go online, how we would do it, and or how we could keep it physical. And so I had read an article about this Argentinian metal band that had performed in a hotel courtyard, and then their fans bought hotel rooms that overlooked the courtyard. So that's how they were able to attend the concert and still keep within their little COVID bubble. And so we looked at 3 different hotel options here, and 2 of them were really expensive. So, and
I
it
guess.
wasn't something that we could buy out right, and so we were always communicating with the filmmakers to see, would you be willing to do A, B, or C? Would you be interested in, D, E, or F? So we were always communicating with the filmmakers from the very beginning. Because this was new to us. And since they were attending festivals with their films, we wanted to know what other people were doing as well. And so we looked at renting out hotels, we looked at parking lots, we looked everywhere. And then finally, I think in June, our theater said, we don't think we're going to be open in August. It was also because theaters reopening in the summer were tied to the release of Tenet and Mulan. And then once Disney and Tenet pulled out of theaters, Lemley was like, let's move you to November, because we should be open by then.
Yes, we should be
um,
open.
we should be open by then, yeah. And so we pushed it back, but we were still actively looking for a second viable backup plan. We looked at, oh my goodness, we looked at so many different platforms. I wasn't happy with any of them. We looked at virtual reality screenings, and
Everything.
we looked at everything. I looked at this platform called Event Farm, which is beautiful. And I still want to play around with it and get people to come in and join me. It was really expensive. It was $10,000 a day. So again, it was out of
Oh
our
my
budget, but
God, yeah,
it
that's
was a
really
lot of
nice.
fun. It's like your own private island, your own private, I don't know. I don't know what to call it. It was just fun to be on. I had fun in there. Um, and then, so we were going through all of this stuff. And then I, I was also in touch with our local politicians too. And so I contacted our our contact at the council member's office to find out just if we might be able to have an outdoor screening somewhere. And they called the mayor's office and they were like, you should rely on a drive-in. Do not try and do anything else. It's not going to happen.
Okay,
So,
that's really good advice. Yeah, so great to have
yeah.
relationships.
And we just looked everywhere for a venue. We just couldn't find one. And so we had told our filmmakers that if we couldn't put together a physical festival, that we would cancel the festival, refund their money, but we would still do an online showcase for those who wanted to participate. And it would be totally optional. It wouldn't be a festival. It would just be a selections of the festival. And so I had called Simple DCP, who puts together our drives, and they were going through every single platform with me. They spent a good hour and a half, 2 hours on the phone with me, which I really appreciated. And at the very, very end, I don't know why they didn't lead with this. At the very end, they had said, oh, the Regency 16 just converted their parking lot into a drive-in. You might want to reach out to them. And so as soon as I got off the phone, like, I called them. And at the time, they were only booking a handful of weeks out in advance because we were still hopeful that the city would reopen. And obviously, if the city reopened, they would go back to having screenings in the theater and would disband their drive-in. So it was really, I was on pins and needles because even though they hadn't booked anything for November, they wouldn't let me book for November. And so I was like, I don't know what to do. Should I plan as if we're having a drive-in or not? And so I decided maybe after a week of going through this, like, let's just plan as if we are having a drive-in. And then if we cancel, we have to cancel. So I think we put everything together in 3 weeks.
That is insane.
Once we got the go ahead to do it. And then as we started out this conversation, our first weekend it rained, our second weekend we had winds, and then the third weekend we had a curfew. So it was just,
I think this is wonderful. And it shows the resilience filmmakers have and that you have, like, to go through every step, going online, and then is it happening, and then insurance, and then authorization. I think this is so inspiring. And it happened, and it was so successful. And
thank you.
I think it's a great, probably one of the best success stories of the year, really, in the film industry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. So my parting words are just, revisit old ideas. Don't think just because they didn't work at one time that they can't be put into place in the future. So once we found a drive-in that was already in place, then our insurance company was able to approve insurance for it because the cars were covered under the theater and not under our policy. So yeah, just revisit ideas. They're ideas and they can be good, or they could be better for something else, but there aren't any bad ideas. So
I love it. I think it's very good advice for every film, right? To always be open, always be prepared, but still also be open, right? To be prepared, be on it, and also be open for new opportunities because you never know what can happen last minute. And honestly, I think after this, if filmmakers who are listening are not convinced that they should submit the film to the Valley Film Festival, like, because you can even go through a global pandemic. And honestly, I think it's thank you so much. Like, it's really inspiring, Tracey. It's very, for filmmakers who also go through a lot to make their films happen and, go through all the stages, you telling these stories with so much humility, honestly, I think it makes a really big difference. So thanks so much for that.
You.
And we'll make sure to include all your details in the description. Please, everyone, you can submit your film on Film Freeway to the Valley Film Festival, and we'll also put the social media in the description. And thanks so much for your generosity with your time, because you only just wrapped up. So it's a very, very inspiring chat.
Well, thank you so much. And I would love to just chat with you again, just because I can't believe you and I haven't met over the years. So
exactly, I felt the same. Because and especially even when I was at Gaumont 7 years ago, I really worked with so many festivals, and I should check. I'm still curious if we haven't been in touch, because like your festival is so inspiring. So I will be extremely pleased to support your festival for the years, because honestly, our love for French cinema, I cannot say how much I agree with you with the French New Wave, and it's really inspiring, because right, to be a good filmmaker, you need to know about the history of films too, right? It's really important not to forget.
We do forget, and it's I don't know. I'm really passionate about the silent era, the golden age of cinema, just because we do need to preserve and archive the film that is disappearing and dissolving, and just make sure that audiences can see it for future years.